We're going to finish our environment projects today using linked objects. We need to make each object in a separate file, and we're going to use our reference images like a map. So here I see I need to make a pine tree, a rock, and finally I'll drop my Project 1 castle in. I can duplicate the trees and the rocks later. So I'm going to go on Google and look up a reference image, and I want a tree that's weighed down with snow. In the front view, I'll bring in the image that I downloaded to my laptop, and now I can look at this while I work. To me, it looks like each of these branches is very, very similar, so I only need to make one branch and duplicate it. I'll use a plane, I'll cut it up with loop cuts, and then edit the vertices to make a very rough branch shape. Now I'm going to click on the end of the branch and put what's called the 3D cursor there. And now go to Object, Set Origin, and Origin to 3D Cursor. Now I can rotate around this point. I can duplicate it and spin it in a circle, and I've made the top row of branches on my tree. I arrange them so they're not bumping into each other. Give them a little space so they're not exactly the same. And then I extrude without moving and hit Enter. I scale down the extrusion and extrude again, and then I add what's called a low-level subdivision surface to round it out. So now it looks like there's snow piled up on the branches. I duplicate this set of branches, rotate it, and use scale to make it bigger. I rotate it and move them around each time. This starts to look like a tree. Then I extrude and rotate and scale the top face of a cylinder to make the tree trunk. And I edit a plane on top to look like a snow-capped part of the very top of the tree. I also extrude it down or use a solidify modifier. I use proportional editing to pull down these lumps, and it looks like snow. There we go. Make sure you apply all of your modifiers on any object when you are done. Then I select all these objects and hit Ctrl-J to join them. I save it, and I go back to my environment file. I go up to File, Link File, and I select my tree object from the Tree Project Object folder. This brings the tree in, so I have to click on it and select it. Then up in the right-hand corner, there's the outliner panel, and I right-click on the object that's selected, and it brings up a list. And I go down to ID Data, down to Add Library Override. Now I have a linked object that I can move around and edit in object mode. I duplicate it and set it all over like I'm using a map on my top view. Then I bring each tree down and put it into place using the side view and the front view. I also flip into 3D view as well. I let my reference images help me. I can scale these, rotate them, and move them around. And these are called linked files. We'll go over why linked files are wonderful later. So now I'm going to tilt some of these trees around and scale them up. And so it looks pretty much like my map, and it also looks good in the 3D view. I want to kind of tilt these trees here this way and that way. Now I'm going to make my rock file, save this, go into a new file, and I'm going to name it Jared Rock, save it in my environment folder. So far I have my hill file, my tree file, and now my rock file in the same folder. And all I'm going to do is take a cube, and in edit mode I'm going to chop it up with loop tools, and proportional editing I'm just going to pull it out of shape. Then I'm going to go into my modifiers in object mode and add a subdivision surface. I'll make a few last minute stretches to the rock and I'll save it. Now I'm going to go back into my environment, link the rock file, See, I'll click on it here, go up to the list, right-click on the highlighted object, go to ID Data, and add Library Override. Now I can move it around, I can duplicate it, I can rotate it, resize it, and it looks like I'm using a whole bunch of different rocks, but I'm really just linked to one because I'm rotating them, I'm sticking them halfway through the ground, and I'm resizing them. And it gives my hill a little bit more character. Once this is done, I only have to add my Project 1 building, which was originally going to be a cabin, but then I made a castle. So now I'm going to go and link to my Project 1 building. Which is already sized the way I want. And add a library override so I can move it up. I don't want to resize my building because it's the scale that I want. But unfortunately, it looks like my hill is not scaled for a castle. It's scaled for a cabin. I could fit a small cabin, but a giant castle, I have to make some changes. So I'll move the castle out of the way. I'll select everything in the scene and I'll scale it up so it fits the castle better. Now I can move the castle back on top, and I see it's not connecting with the landscape. So I'm going to move some rocks, I'm going to move the land so it goes right up, so it looks like it's sitting on the land and it's not hanging off the edges. So this takes a little extra problem solving. Here we go. Next, I see that the trees look way too big for a giant castle, so I'm going to move them a little bit and scale them down a tiny bit so they match the scale of the castle. There we go. The scene is ready to hand in, and I will walk you through how to do that in class because we're going to have to include more than one file. We're going to have to include all of our linked files. So I'll walk you through how to do this in class.